This next panel is on solving audio intelligibility challenges in hybrid workspaces. I'm thrilled to introduce Izzy Damara and David Danto. Hi, guys. How's it going?
Hi, Steph. It's good. Thanks for having us.
Well, greeting. Grace to be here.
Of course. So I wanted to first just give you guys a few minutes to just introduce yourselves, talk about your experience in the industry, what you do. David, do you want to start us off?
Not really, but okay.
Period.
I'm in my 46th year of trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. That started in broadcasting, took me through AV and from an end user, from a consultant, and now I'm an industry analyst with talking points. So I get to look at everything that everybody does and say what's great and terrible about it.
Awesome. Love it. Izzy, what about you?
Awesome. My name is Izzy Damara. I'm marketing manager at RoomReady. We're a full AV integrator, and we really specialize in video conferencing solutions and cool audio spaces for corporate America. So I still think I'm a little newer to AV within the last couple of years. Before that, I was a college coach. So big change, but I really love the industry, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, everybody was new at some point, and I think that you are going to be able to offer some really fresh perspective because the AV industry has changed a lot in the past 2 years. So I'm excited to just dive in here. So when it comes to room design, what are the most common flaws that you guys think affect audio intelligibility and those hybrid workspaces? Because let's face it, that's pretty much what all of us are doing right now. And how can those be addressed early in the design phase? And that's for whoever wants to, take that first.
You want to go first, Izzy, or you want me to start?
You know what? I would love to. I got this one. So I think one of the biggest things when it comes to designing these hybrid workspaces is that a lot of times people bring the integrator in later in the design process. So I think there's a lot of things that could really contribute to the success of that video collaboration space if the integrator was involved a little bit earlier. Little things like talking about the, room dimensions and then the certain materials that are used. I think one of the biggest issues that we see is the room acoustics itself and what types of materials we have. And people love of all like floor to ceiling glass wall. It looks great, but it doesn't sound great. So I think, bringing in an integrator earlier into the design phase to kind of help with that could alleviate a lot of issues before they even truly become issues.
And I would definitely agree with Izzy. That's something we've been talking about for years, which is, when you come in at the 11th hour and the wiring's in the wrong place and the equipment spaces that have been left for you are in the wrong place. And that's all very true. But I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record here today for the next half hour. I apologize if anybody's old enough to remember what that is. But everything has changed in the last 2 years. The things that you used to not be able to correct as far as audio is concerned are now magically correctable. And I use the term magic. You've heard that expression that any advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. What we have now is the ability to take rooms that are fully glass walls and completely reverberant, that have microphones in the wrong places and all of it, and somehow by stacking various AI algorithms and sound cleaning algorithms, make it sound like somebody's talking into a handheld microphone. And this is all very new to the market right now, and it's different manufacturers have it under different brand names. Some of these are publicly available algorithms, some are licensable algorithms, but it's night and day in terms of what it used to be. I used to be the first person to come out during I was talking about 46 years, come out and say, look, they're microphones, they're not miracles. You have the physics of sound and sound pressure levels. You have to be close to a pickup and all the rest of that. And you know what? Honestly, I'm wrong. It's out the window now. Now we have the ability to put back the pieces of audio that are missing by having really intelligent computers figure out what should have been there and put it back in. It's really a miracle. So we're starting to approach the age where it used to really matter. And now it's not going to make that much of a difference if the microphone's in the front or on the sides or on the ceiling or on the table or if there's somebody crunching, food or typing on a keyboard, because we're now going to be able to clean that stuff sort of automatically. And that really changes the nature of the business that we're in.
No, both really good points. But David, by your logic, do you think that microphone placement, you're saying like that's not as crucial anymore in these workspaces, because no matter whether someone is joining in the office or joining from their house like I'm doing now, we're going to kind of be able to have that same level of technology, so we're going to be able to be leveled out and sound essentially the same?
Well, I'm not sure it, how widespread the applications will be.
Right.
I'm not sure what you're going to use in your house. Right now, I'm using a cardioid microphone, less than a foot away from my mouth, and I assume I sound pretty good. And the I don't know how much intensive audio application I'm going to want to put here in my home setup. But again, everything is becoming less expensive and in the cloud, so who knows? But I'm talking about specifically in the conference room. I used to put microphones down the center row of a table because you wanted to have them as close to the speakers as possible. When you put them as goosenecks, people twiddle and break them. When you put them in the center of the table and they cover them with plans, it sounds like thunderstorms coming by. When you put
Yeah.
them in the ceiling, it's unfortunately too far away and it would get a little bit hollow. And then none of it matters if you're in a really long room and somebody's looking away from the microphone and talking into a glass wall, it would sound reverberant. And all of that was true and intelligent and smart as part of designs. But you go on YouTube right now and do a search for video conferencing reverb reduction and look at the kind of stuff that Neat has in their algorithm and the kind of stuff that Cisco has in their algorithm. And, you'll be floored. You've got people sitting in the back of a 30-foot conference room with glass walls aimed away from the microphone, and they sound great. So, yeah, we're kind of approaching that point where these large rooms, 10, 20, 30 feet, it's not as critical as it once was that microphones be in the exact right place anymore.
That's a good point. Izzy, I'm interested to see if you're seeing this too, or if as an integrator, you're still seeing in your end of the business that it is still very crucial where you place the microphone in rooms, if that like technology is still just like really new.
Yeah, so I think the technology is new and it's still emerging. So from, an application standpoint, for us, it is still important to make sure we're pretty close to where the microphone needs to be. Whether that's going to be a table microphone, a ceiling microphone, it really is going to depend on the space when we decide what type of microphone we're going to use, whether we're using boundary microphones at a conference room table or a beam forming microphone that we're placing in the ceiling in a larger space. And then we still need to tailor that microphone and program it so we're picking up where we want it to. We're creating, a little acoustic fence around the spaces. So, and we still need to adjust for the HVAC, 'cause sometimes that'll kick on. And if it's right above that microphone, it has the potential to kind of ruin a meeting for you. So it's still important, but I definitely agree with David that the technology is evolving rapidly. And, we keep talking about AI, and, we're to a point where a lot of these manufacturers have AI built into their DSPs to kind of, reduce all of that noise and filter it out before it even gets to that far end user.
Yeah. So let's pivot to speakers for a second. We've been talking a lot about microphones. What do you guys think decision makers should prioritize when it comes to enhancing intelligibility, especially in those larger, a little more reverberant boardroom style rooms?
Well, as you grow the size of the space, when you're growing from what would be a drop-in system to a more heavily integrated system, it's kind of a difficult challenge. And at Infocom last year, it was easier for me to tell you the names of companies that didn't have video bar products than the ones that did. They were coming out of the woodwork everywhere. And then
Yeah.
if you think about it, some companies have really small ones and they call it out for small rooms. And then, they start to grow for medium and for larger rooms. But you get into this math problem where if the only speaker that I have in the room is coming from a video bar at the front of the room, if I'm going to make it loud enough for the last chair in the room to hear it intelligibly, is it too loud for the first chair in the room? This has nothing to do with microphone pickup, as you point out. A good beamforming microphone and some good audio algorithms, for cleaning, you can make everybody sound good. But in the room itself, the audio propagation, if it's only coming from that one source, may be too much as the room gets bigger. So that's where you need to start looking at adding in external speakers, either having it be a voice lift system in the room to begin with for those larger spaces, or adding a supplemental speaker system, for a system that has a video bar that needs a little bit of extra push in the back, but you don't want to make that, you don't want to blow the ears off the person sitting in the front of the room. So it's kind of it gets back to understanding the technology. A lot of that stuff very easy to put in, but you can easily make the wrong decision if you don't understand that you have to balance it out for everybody in the room. So that's really, as you start to get past 6, 8, 10 chairs aside on a table, that's where you start to really need to look into what are the other options that are available.
Izzy, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that one of the things that the decision makers should prioritize is the clarity that you're hearing over the speakers rather than the volume. To David's point, an all-in-one video bar with the speakers and microphone built in could be a really great solution. But like you said, once you get, to 8, 10 people or even larger, it's going to really be loud for those people at the front of the room, really hard to hear at the back of the room. So in that case, it makes more sense to go with, a ceiling distributed speaker system, have multiple, so that everyone's still hearing clearly in the room, but you're not getting blasted with that volume. So I think, really prioritizing clarity over volume is super important when, making those decisions.
Clarity over volume is a really, really good point. So we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but can you guys walk us through how DSP and noise cancellation technologies that are widely available right now really work to improve that audio clarity? And are there any other new advancements kind of on the horizon that either of you are super excited about right now?
You want to go first, Izzy, or you want me to start diving into the techies?
Why don't you dive into the techie part and I'll chime in a minute.
Okay. Well, the first thing I'll correct you in is we're not necessarily talking about digital signal processing anymore, DSPs. DSPs used to be large banks of iron that would sit in the room, chips on a device. And, a lot of that processing power is moving into the cloud and into software. So just from a terminology standpoint, it isn't that. What we're starting to see from an algorithm standpoint are stacked algorithms. And I'm reading here because I don't want to get them wrong. You have a number of them that are signal normalization, segmentation, and feature extraction, which will kind of fix the missing parts that are there. You have denoising algorithms. You're having hammering going on in your apartment before. If you kicked on the right algorithm, it would know to knock the hammer out or the barking dog out or the chewing chips or whatever keyboard noises. There are various filtering and matrix factorization algorithms that are in there. Then there are deep learning models that get added on that. So typically, in a device that's doing good audio cleaning, you could have anywhere 12, 13, 14, 15 different stacked algorithms in the right order that are picking up audio, removing what you don't want there, replacing the pieces that it finds that are missing, and sweetening up and cleaning the audio. And if it sounds like it's science fiction and doesn't exist, again, I implore you, just do a web search for reverb removal and voice isolation and things like that on YouTube, and take a look at what some of it sounds like, because it's truly stunning. So those are the things that you're starting to see incorporated into the technology. And another change you're starting to see, and again, I can argue both sides of this, is you're starting to see devices come to the market that don't require technology specialists setting them up. One manufacturer just came up with a brand new ceiling microphone with 64 elements that you hang from a room and you press a button and it sets itself up, blasts little bits of high frequency noise, spaces out the room, and does it all by itself. Is that as good as a really good audio engineer and audio technician? You can argue that point till the day is done. I know that there are people who will say that those types of devices save the audio specialists for when they're really needed in the odd shaped rooms and the big auditoriums and conference halls and things like that. Then there are people who say that it'll never replace, the kind of expertise, the art of sound as opposed to the science of sound. I'm not going to take a side on that one way or another, but the technology coming to market is really stunning. And if you're not familiar with it, you should be.
Good points. Good points. Izzy, what do you got?
Yeah, so I think that the AI and the technology that's starting to kind of come out through the cloud, DSP like, is really impressive. I think that it's going to be exciting to see where it goes. There are a few like almost like virtual microphones that I've been seeing, to David's point, where it's creating its own kind of matrix within the space to then decide where and when to pick up audio. So I'm excited to kind of see how that goes. But I think we're still a little bit early into those types of solutions to definitively say whether they're going to be great or not, or somewhere in between.
No, I get that for sure. In terms of what's popular right now, in terms of a microphone solution, in my experience, I have seen more beamforming microphones than anything else. They've just been increasingly popular over the past 5 years. What's your opinion on these? Do you think they mitigate the background noise effectively? What are key factors to consider when deploying these?
I'll start, I guess. I think, yes, we are installing and using a lot of different beamforming microphones in spaces. I think one of the biggest things to keep in mind is the placement of them in a space. Technology is evolving, it's getting smarter. We're able to kind of shift where we want that beamforming direction to go. So I think that's something we're kind of building in an acoustic fence of, okay, if it's a more open office layout, we're kind of putting in that fence in where it's just around that conference room table or where that conversation's really happening. So it's not picking up people speaking, walking in the background. So I think that's one of the biggest things is placement, and then configuring it towards that need of the room.
And I would only add that, and I wrote an article about this a couple of months ago that caused a bit of controversy going back and forth. We are approaching a time in the science of acoustics and audio where it almost doesn't matter where the microphone is. We're not there yet, but we're starting to approach that. And by putting a microphone in a ceiling, a beamforming microphone above or in the front of the room, and then adding on these stacked algorithms, you're able to really create a sound that's useful. We're approaching a future where the microphones may be embedded in the lighting instruments or in the bezel of the display in front of the room, or in the table or in the backs of the chairs or anywhere all over in the room where it could go. Because what we're then doing is if you think about this, with all the Star Trek references behind me, if you think about this like the bridge of the Enterprise, there wasn't any specific microphone that anybody was talking into. It was just kind of picking up and, hey, this is the best camera shot. Hey, this is the best microphone audio coming in. Let's do a little cleaning. Let's do a little adjusting. We're starting to get to that capability where the devices will start to figure it out. So while today's answer for beamforming microphone might be the right answer, the answer might be that those beamforming elements might be scattered around the room, and they'll figure out their own array. And the algorithm behind it will figure out which microphone to go to. We kind of now have, from a camera standpoint, we have cameras that are in the middle of the room and on the sides of the room and in the front of the room, and they're all kind of working together. Microphone arrays are going to start to do the same thing in the very near future.
So, if this is kind of a tough question, but it's a question that I feel like comes up a lot. If there is one immediate improvement that organizations could implement to enhance audio clarity without a major investment, like key point right there, what would you guys recommend? Or would you just nothing?
Well, the first recommendation that I would make, and Izzy, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm sure you would agree with me, is that if you're still dealing with meeting rooms that you've had for 5, 10, 15 years, throw them out. The improvements that we have made in the technology since the godforsaken pandemic, and all the things that we've learned and incorporated into the various technologies, no matter what brand, are life-changing compared to what we used to have. So if you haven't gone through and updated your systems because they were on an 8-year amortization schedule or a 10-year amortization schedule, throw them out. What you can buy today is less expensive and more powerful than anything that you had. And specifically in the hybrid world that we're in right now, it's not as important to have 1 or 2 very expensive rooms as it is to have all rooms equipped to be able to manage remote guests. So the basic, most simple piece of advice is go out and buy some new stuff. You'll be stunned at how less expensive it is and how much better it is than what you had from 2 or 3 years ago.
Great.
Yeah,
Izzy.
upgrades, people, upgrades. That's what
Oh,
I
you'd
have to
like
say
that one.
about that. Yeah, and if you have an updated solution where you're using, newer technology and your audio still isn't quite there, I think a lot of times we see those issues in those very reverberant spaces. So, kind of a low cost adjustment, maybe quick win for this would be adding in some softer furnishings, some acoustic panels, curtains to kind of absorb that sound and reduce the echo. And, um, you know, always go back to your integrator and see if they can adjust the audio settings as well for that pickup. That's something that your integrator should be able to do and help you with. And if not, it could be a limitation in the space itself.
So, also, how can companies ensure that they're staying up to date with audio solutions that do keep the pace, specifically with the evolving requirements that the whole hybrid portion kind of brings in?
Well, I would throw in the silly term about the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is you have to be smart enough about a certain subject in order to know just how little you know about it. Some great explanations, one from John Cleese online, if you ever want to look for it to get a better explanation than I just gave. But if you're an end user company and you're specifying your own rooms because you think this has all gotten very simple, you may or may not know about the changes that are coming on board. You may not have the expertise. When you connect yourself with a good integrator, such as the one that Izzy is with, or any one of any number of other integrators, they should come in and tell you, you see these 20 rooms, you don't need me for that. Here, buy the product from Best Buy or buy it from us, and we'll hand it to you. You have your IT person put it in, whatever. But you see these 10 rooms here, you really need our help. And knowing the difference is what we as AV professionals provide in terms of a skill. So I would go back to the Dunning-Kruger is make sure that you're dealing with partners that are your trusted partners and will give you good advice about what works and what doesn't and where they really need it. Because if you're dealing with an integrator that says, oh, by the way, every one of your rooms needs to be integrated and we need to pull wires on every one and then design all of them, they're probably not telling you the truth. So finding those trusted partners is a good first step.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. I think another thing when we're talking about keeping pace with the hybrid work requirements is, for that company, take a step back and say, okay, we're hybrid now. We've got people in a few days a week, out a few days a week. We're seeing a lot of companies kind of reduce their overall real estate footprint where they are saying, okay, we don't need, this office taking up 7 floors in a building with, 500 individual offices. We need, 100 hoteling stations. So, and then we need this many conference rooms where we can do, whiteboarding or, digital collaboration. They may not even all need, video capabilities. You could have, a presentation only space when, if you've got your whole team in once a week, you've got a space to go in and kind of work together that's a little bit quieter. And then for those hoteling stations or even for your remote employees, I think a huge gap for customers is that they don't really prioritize those like individual headsets and microphones. We've talked a lot here about, the workspace, the conference room, and we've become hybrid space, so hybrid work. So making sure that you're investing in a good headset. If you're in an open office area, they tend to be a little bit louder. So potentially adding in some acoustic fencing or sound masking system can be really helpful to just kind of reduce the ambient noise of the space and improve productivity from that standpoint as well.
And that's actually a great point that Izzy just made is that, we're talking about hybrid workspaces, but, we've been talking primarily about rooms and audio pickup in rooms. Hybrid is remote. hybrid is on the road, hybrid is home offices, hybrid is, hoteling, and how do you manage the hoteling and the requests and the reservations for them. It covers a lot of different spaces. I'm not a big believer in either of the extremes, which is we're going to close all our offices and everybody's going to work from home entirely, or everybody needs to be back in the office or return to office, like, a large company just recently put together. I think anybody on the extreme is wrong. I think, and one size doesn't fit all, but I think some balance of flexibility with working and coming together for a purpose. Don't ask people to come into an office where you have these rooms just for the sake of them being there, but what's their agenda that week and what are they trying to accomplish and how often do they get together? So anyway, the goal, if we're talking about hybrid, is it extends from desktops at home to desktops in the office to rooms and across the whole gamut.
Where do you see that line being? Like you were talking about, like, there's this line of, like, you have to bring people in for the specific purpose. Like, is it the specific purpose of the type of work that they're completing that day, or the specific purpose of what type of meeting it is, or this, like, where is that?
Okay, so you should be aware that you just triggered me, and I could go for the next hour on that subject. I'll avoid doing that. I don't believe the correct terminology for what we're talking about is flexibility. I think from a knowledge worker standpoint, flexibility is the wrong way to look at it. I think what we're talking about is autonomy. The CTO of Zoom is a good friend of mine, likes to point out, he goes to a room full of CTOs and says, would you hire anybody that you don't trust? And all of the CTOs say, never in a million years. They have to be somebody we trust and we support and we respect and everything. And then, well, how come when you hire them, do you stop trusting them? All of a sudden, now we need to badge in, and now you need to see me at a desk. Now, there's no one on the planet who knows better where I need to be on any given day than me or you or anyone else on this call or coming up on the call. We, if we're knowledge workers, we understand, I hate that term, but it's the one that exists. We all know better when we need to be with our colleagues because we have brainstorming to do, when we need to be at an event, like when we're getting together at ISE or Infocom, when we need to be at a client's office. We know better than them. And if we're producing the results, whether they be sales or deliverables or anything else, what difference does it make where my body is on any given day? Get off my back. I'm not a child anymore. And if I'm not producing the results that are required, I shouldn't be working for you. Get rid of me. So I'm a big believer that the whole conversation around RTO is just completely gone. It should be about the autonomy of the employee and are they meeting their goals?
Great. I mean, I agree. But at the end of the day, like, I just don't think that's gonna be what happens, like, at least not immediately. So in the meantime, we do need to make sure we sound good both places, because that is just that's the universe we're in right now. So I guess, does this, my last question, I'm just going to ask, and Izzy, I'm really interested in your response to this, because do you see the recent potential really crazy AI new updates to microphone and speaker technology? Do you see that changing, like, the relationship between at what point an integrator steps into a project?
I don't know if I see any change in, like, when an integrator would step into the project. I think that, the AI and all of the, evolution of technology that we're seeing is something that as integrators, we're keeping a very close eye on it. And so I think for us, we will kind of approach any sort of engagement based on, a recommendation for what is going to meet that end user's needs. So, if it comes down to the design of their space and they simply do not want any sort of ceiling microphones, no table microphones, we'll kind of answer that as we go. But, for now, we're just kind of keeping an eye on things and making sure that we're prepared for these updates as they come in so that, we can be that, informed advisor for our end users. She's muted.
Sorry. I knew I would do that at least one time today. So now that has been my time.
You just snuck it in at the end.
me not following any best practices today. Clearly doing awesome. So we have a couple of minutes here to just kind of wind down. I did want to ask if either of you just kind of had any final comments, qualms, or anything to give the people who are watching. David, I know you got something good for me.
Well, I'm always trying to be deferential to my friend Izzy. I want to let her talk first. If she's talking about all the McCardles and all the great things that they're doing at Room Ready. So I'll give her the shot at the first piece, and if there's anything left out, I'll add it for you.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I think audio is so important when it comes to creating a productive work environment, whether you're in the office, you're at home, you're on the road, you're in a noisy airport. And so there are tools out there to help you work successfully and collaborate successfully. But it really comes down to working with an integrator who knows how to help you meet your use case. I think that's the biggest thing of there's a way to get it done. There's a way that you can be successful, but you've got to kind of probably change how you've been doing things for the last few years. And it may be updating that old conference room like David was talking about.
Perfect.
And I'll add that we're so lucky to be living in a time when this technology is just taking off, and the things that when we started out in video conferencing with all the noisy stuff behind me because you needed a place to call to see if your video conferencing worked. Now we just assume that it's video dial tone and it works, and take advantage of some of the new technologies that are out there. Buy it from good companies, and if you don't know which of those companies are, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to fill you in on it.
Perfect. And that leads me into my actual final question. Where can people find you after this session? Izzy?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Izzy Demera, formerly Elizabeth. So you may have to find me there, Elizabeth Demera. And then on Twitter, you can find me, Izzy Demera, just all my name, one word. That's my handle.
Perfect. David?
Well, you can go to talkingpointswithaz.com, which is the industry analyst work that I'm doing, or you can go to danto.info if you want to find out anything more about me, or just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am one of 2 David Dantos in the world. The other one is a distant cousin in Canada. So if it's not Canada, then it's me.
Great. All right. Well, thank you both so much. I have appreciated your time, and I've appreciated this conversation. You're both great.
Thank you, Steph. Great seeing you.
Thanks for having
Bye.
us.
I'm going to bring Megan back on now.